Hello all. I thought I'd do a stream of consciousness over my colouring of the drawing of Yaira rather than give you a music track. I'd already set it up, as you can see, so I'd done the transparencies and all the extra layers and started with the skin because that was just the most interesting thing. Now, I have to admit, Yaira didn't particularly interest me after reading item number 1. I wasn't totally sure why people were so excited by the idea, other than it just being a girl in a superhero comic. I know that's quite a popular thing. For me, it wasn't until I saw a couple of interviews with the Soska sisters and started getting a feeling like they knew what they were actually doing, that they had a real passion for the subject, and that kind of got me more interested. So I grabbed myself a copy of their Black Widow comic, No Restraints Play, which I haven't read yet, but it's making me actually far more interested in getting my hands on Yaira and seeing what they do with the character. It's also interesting that Eric hasn't gone for a traditional TNA artist to draw Yaira. Deborah Caritas seems more along the lines of a European style artist, so quite a brave move from Eric, because I think people would have certain expectations. Now, you will see occasionally pop up pictures of one of the covers from Alphacore and a picture of Yaira. I was using those to get the costume colours right, because Yaira's costume is quite complicated. And I also found it quite difficult to pin down the Alphacore costumes. I've got Alphacore number 1 and the first 2 item comics, and the costumes change a little. Even within Alphacore number 1, the costumes change. And I found that quite difficult to pin down, so I may not have got them 100% right. In fact, you'll see later on, there's a moment where I changed Solari's costume because I realised I'd done it completely green when there's some grey-green going on there. Braxton was actually an afterthought with the drawing. Probably shouldn't admit that. I'd planned the first 3 figures and they worked as I wanted, and then I realised I couldn't really leave him out. I sketched him in a couple of positions, but it never sat right until I put him in the position he now is in. It kind of still gives you that triangle shape. Kind of one of those things that people tell you should be in compositions. I don't always follow the rules that people say, but sometimes it works. So there I am working on Yaira's costume, and I get to the boot, or rather the sole of the boot, and I suddenly realised that I hadn't done Solari's neck. Really weird. I don't know how I missed it. So I kind of quickly filled that in. I don't have any real order to what I do when I'm colouring. I'm not really a huge fan of colouring. I'm just not that quick at it. Part of it might be that I'm slightly colourblind, and in fairness, part of that might be the fact that I use a mouse rather than a drawing pad to colour. Obviously, the mouse isn't quite as flexible or as controllable, you know, when you're used to using a pen. I always find hair really difficult as well. I don't know why, it just completely confuses me and throws me. Again, probably the mouse thing. If I had a pad, I could do the lines much easier and much simpler. Now, I knew Yaira's hair was going to be quite tricky. Blonde hair, I always find quite difficult to do when I'm colouring. It's knowing what shades to do to actually make it look blonde. The tinted ends obviously add an extra complication that makes life difficult when you're as inexperienced as me. An extra little complication when scanning in a hand-drawn picture for colouring on the computer is that when you draw things by hand, you don't have to join all the lines, but if you want to try and colour things in, every line has to be joined, because the way I colour, I use spaces and I select an area, and if there's a gap, then the area doesn't fill properly. There was a quick jump there, and I'm sorry about that. I did actually record the start of me doing the background, but unfortunately my computer crashed, and whilst I kept what I'd done, the recording just died. So I know this seems weird that I'm now doing a background separate from the original drawing. I wasn't 100% sure whether I was going to do that, whether it was going to have a background, whether I was just going to leave it with the figures. So I wanted to draw the background separately to give me that option. I also wanted to see if maybe I could fade the background out a little bit compared to the main picture to see if that would bring the figures forward more. And doing it separately gave me that flexibility. It also brings in its own issues that I have to plan the background enough to fit all the spaces. And unfortunately, as you'll see a bit later, I had to do a bit of cobbling together to get it to work. Now you may have noticed the electric bolt and Ingrid's powers, her whips, they have a different coloured outline. Now I cut all of that out of the video because that was a very laborious, labour intensive process, and I didn't think you'd want to see me deleting every single line just so as I could colour those lines in. I know I didn't particularly enjoy doing it, but I think it works really well and gives a nice effect. So right now what I'm trying to do is figure out what colour to do the sky. I really liked this kind of pinky rusty red, but then I put the blue on it and it just seemed to work better. I was slightly worried because there's a lot of blue in the image with Yaira's costume, some of the background buildings, so the red would have been a nice contrast, but I decided that I would go with the blue sky. I just think it knits the image together better and gives more of a unified look. I also had to fix Yaira's hand because when I did the outline for the bolt, I accidentally changed the outline for the hand as well. And there you have it, my picture of Ripperverse's Yaira kicking the collective backsides of Alphacore. Thanks for watching. I actually have my own graphic novel available from my website and the link is in the description below. Peace out.